to Driving the Line, the pursuit of safety, where we talk about the real issues out on the road, focus on safe driving, and learn industry best practices from your hosts, Kenny Ray, Mike Bohan, Jim Seibert, and Barry Harrison, in the hopes that by driving the line, we get more drivers home safe and sound. This podcast was made possible by Marsh McLennan Agency.
Good day and Happy New Year's, everyone. Welcome to Driving the Line, the podcast that's always in the pursuit of safety. I am Jim Seibert, and today, along with my friends and co-hosts, Kenny Ray, Mike Bohan, and Barry Harrison, we'll be discussing safety meetings. Mike's going to lead this one, and he has a fantastic program about spicing up your safety meetings. The other fellas and I, we're going to be joining in with questions and commentary that may come to mind. So hold on to your seats, folks. This two-parter will have something for every safety professional as well as the operators. Mike, it sure has been cold out. How are you going to warm us up here with a cup of coffee around the break room table?
Well, Jim, I tell you, this is a topic that we kick around quite a bit in our team, and it's something that when we look in this industry, our trucking companies that are listening to us out there, this idea of a safety meeting and how people can be successful with these is sometimes a challenge. It sometimes feels overwhelming to folks. So I think the best thing to do when we look at a safety meeting, and really all a safety meeting is a tool that we can use, right? It's a tool that we utilize to get better as a company. It's helping us get to a certain point, helping us be more successful, be more effective, be more efficient in our operations. If we break it down and kind of structure it in a way that it's easy to understand, we get little bite-sized pieces of it, I think it helps folks because it's not just this thing out there that seems a little overwhelming. It's something that we can really look at in a way that it makes it a little easier for folks to absorb and understand and then implement back at their company. So, you guys have heard me talk about this topic before, and one of the things that I've done is just broken this down, and I've got a few key areas to look at when we look at what a safety meeting is supposed to look like and how to structure this thing. We're not going to do all this today. I know you've already mentioned we've got a kind of a two-parter here with our podcast on safety meetings. So the first couple of areas we want to look at, I think, are extremely important when it comes to what a safety meeting is supposed to look like. And I'm going to start with the goals of a safety meeting, what we want to get out of a safety meeting, what is important for us on the back end when we get done with the safety meeting. What is this safety meeting trying to get us to? And I think, I don't know, in your guys' travels and you're working with companies out there, I don't know if you see this or not, but I don't think people really stop and think about what we want to get out of a safety meeting, right? It's something that we know we kind of have to do. Somebody either tells us we have to do it or we think it's a good idea to do it, but we're not really thinking about what we want to get out of this.
I think it can fall into we've got to do this to stay out of trouble. We've got to do this to check the box. We've got to do this because maybe somewhere way up high corporate is pushing it down. Start feeling like it's a chore at that point.
I definitely have to agree there, guys. I've been unfortunately a part of some really lackluster safety meetings where you could just tell that, again, to kind of iterate what Jim said, we're just checking a box because, it's one of the corporate policies or what have you. It's, we get out there, we talk for maybe 5 minutes about nothing really, maybe what we did the night before. And then, you sign a JSA and you notice that there's a lot of information on there that you didn't even discuss. So again, this is a powerful tool that Mike has broken this down and can, really be intentional with your safety meetings. I've fortunately had the opportunity to hear him speak, and it's incredible. This information is very, very valuable.
Well, I think one of the things that I'll do here is I'm going to throw out, and I want you guys on here because I know we've all got our ideas on this about what we can get out of a safety meeting. And I present it to folks that, if I'm talking to trucking companies or safety directors, I would present this same thing to them about what the goal may be of a safety meeting or what goal a safety meeting might help us get to. But I'm going to throw a few out there. And you guys, I want to get your guys' ideas as well, because there's one in particular that I think sets at the top of the rest. But I think all of these can be important. As you guys have heard me say, I kind of paint with a broad brush when it comes to the goals, because there's a lot of things that may fall into those. But one of them I'll throw out is just keeping your employees engaged in what you're doing at your company. And I feel like a safety meeting can help you get to that point. We all know how important it is to find good folks, to keep good folks, whether it's a driver, mechanic, an operations person. It doesn't really matter. It's keeping those people engaged in what you're doing. And I'll say this, I feel like whether someone would readily admit it or not, people want to be proud of where they work. And I feel like if you're a safe company, if you make your employees feel valued and they know you care about them and they're safe, that's going to keep them engaged in what you're doing at your company. And I think a good, strong safety meeting that's structured well, that has the right message to it, makes those employees feel that way. And I think that's an important part of any trucking company, is making sure that our people are engaged in what we're doing. You can go about that a lot of different ways, but and we'll talk about some of those ways a little bit later in the podcast. But I think that's one goal that we should shoot for, is keeping everybody engaged. And you guys know, everybody on this podcast, this is a very, very heavily regulated industry. So that's another goal we could have that a safety meeting can help us reach, is being in compliance with the regulations, right? We've got FMCSA, PHMSA, OSHA, EPA, all kinds of different regulatory agencies that have oversight over the trucking industry. So we know for sure that is a key goal that we should have when it comes to safety meetings, is making sure that we are in compliance. Because, guys, it's not just, hey, our logbook's got to be good and our truck's got to be up to shape, right? When I dive off into Jim's world of OSHA, if coming from an old DOT guy, it's like, it can make your head spin. There's a lot of stuff there that trucking companies have to know, especially if you've got a shop or you've got a warehouse. It's important. This is an important aspect. And I know it's a baseline when we're talking about being in compliance with regulations. This is a baseline. This is the minimum, but it's extremely important for a lot of different reasons. And I think this is a goal that a safety meeting can help us get to, is making sure that we're hitting the mark in that area. And like I said before, this is something that covers multiple regulatory agencies, but it's across the board when it comes to our industry and trucking. Guys, you tell me, as you guys are thinking about, you've heard me talk about goals and safety meetings. Anything come to your mind that it would be like top of the list? Or just anything that would we say this is something that a safety meeting would help us reach if we do it right?
Mike, I think one thing, and Barry alluded to the fact that all three of us have seen you present this program both in person and on webinar, and what a phenomenal job you do. I agree with Barry 100% on that. And you name your program Hitting the Mark, the anatomy of a safety meeting. And for any young safety director, inexperienced safety director, safety manager that's been tasked with putting together safety meetings, you basically have developed a blueprint for them to start with, and you give them an outline, if you will, of the segments or the components, what ought to make up an ideal safety meeting. But I guess my question, and we're talking about goals right now, if you had a relatively inexperienced or a new safety director or a safety manager, or maybe we all know trucking companies that put this responsibility on their HR department of all things. But if you had somebody that came to you and said, Mike, I see this outline you've created. I see that I need to follow certain things, but where do I start? If I don't know anything, I guess the question would be, what's the most important? And in my mind, It's what you're talking about right now, the goals. But is that correct? I mean, because if they don't know what they want to accomplish, everything they do after that's really irrelevant. They're just going to be floundering. It's like a ship without a rudder. So, I mean, are we in agreement that for somebody that doesn't even know where they want to go, the most time they need to spend on is figuring out, what am I trying to accomplish? What are my goals?
Yeah, I mean, I agree 100%. I don't know about Jim and Barry. I'm sure they do as well. But if you don't have an idea in mind of what you want to get out of something, we don't know where to start. We don't know what the process is to get there. We don't know what path we need to take. This is kind of, and I feel like that's why this is at the beginning. This is, what we're talking about up front at the beginning is, when you look at a goal of a safety meeting, we need to know what we want to get out of this. Because if we don't know that, we're not gonna get anything out of this. When we're talking about being, Barry mentioned making intentional decisions and having an effective safety meeting, we're not gonna have that if we don't have a goal in mind up front. So, Kenny, to your point, if somebody is struggling with what do I do with a safety meeting, where do I start? This is where you start. Right here. This is where you start. We talk about what do we want to get out of this safety meeting? We talked about employee engagement, compliance with the regulations. There's all kinds of goals out there. That's where we want to start because that's going to tell us what we need to do, or it's going to show us our starting point and the process we go through, and hopefully where we can get where we're hitting that mark, hitting the bullseye of whatever that goal is. And there may be multiple goals of a safety meeting, and that's fine. That's perfectly fine. You may be hitting multiple bullet points in your safety meeting, and that's fantastic. But this is where you got to start, is sitting down, making an intentional decision and saying, we want to get better and we need to get better in this area. This is an issue. This is going to be our goal. This is what we want to get out of this. And you start here. And hopefully it's not just one person, right? I mean, Kenny, you were just talking. It's like, well, it's safety director. Sometimes it's HR people. Hopefully it's not just one person sitting down and figuring this out. Hopefully there are multiple people within your company. There's a team there that you can visit with about this and really talk about what's important to your company and the areas that you need to get better. Agreed, fellas? I mean, are we thinking right on this?
The way you and Kenny just framed that up was kind of a terrifying thought. I mean, it could be overwhelming. It's daunting to think about, coming from two sides. One, you've got support, you've got hire, and you've got your regulatory specialists that are kind of pushing this down and really creating a left and a right limit for you to operate within. And from there, you've got a narrowed scope. I think of some customers that I have where I have a fresh out of college young man that started his safety program in the ag world, focusing on construction, like using things from the construction CFR. And if you don't know any better, you don't know any better. And you've got to have somebody there or an idea or a set of principles that give you that guide, that narrow your focus, that helps you establish what is the end state, what is the intent of the program. And you can backwards plan. If you know what the end goal is, you can backwards plan to how do I start. And so, yes, I wholeheartedly agree. And I just wanted to share that feeling of it can feel overwhelming and daunting and not knowing where to turn and not wanting to look silly in the process. All of a sudden, this is my job. It fell in my job. And, I was running payroll as the HR person last week. And all of a sudden I'm going out and I'm going to be speaking in front of the people that do the work. You're not alone. Okay. So if you're a listener and you fall into that category, take a deep breath. We're going to walk through as subject matter experts, as safety specialists in our role. We're going to lay it out here. And so don't feel alone. Don't be scared. Many have come before you and many will come after, and we'll help you through it.
That's the kind of the point of what we're doing with this podcast, is it's a blueprint. It's just a structure, and guys, it's nothing. It's not rocket science, but there are so many times, and I will even say this. I know at some point in my career, I've felt this where it's like, I don't know where to start with this. I don't know what to do here. And this is just a tool to help us break this down. And I think if we do this each time, we're going to get more comfortable and more comfortable and more comfortable. So if you're sitting out there listening to us, and this is part of your responsibilities as your company, as Jim said, you got this. You'll get there. If you're feeling that way, you may not be feeling that way, and that's fine. But hopefully, we'll give you some good ideas through this process as well. But we just want to break this down and give you some structure to this, because this is an important part of our safety culture and our safety program in our companies, having effective meetings. Well, guys, that's as we go through this, we know the importance of setting a goal or goals for our safety meetings. But another really important aspect of a safety meeting that we need to discuss, and every company out there should intentionally decide on, is who's going to be at these meetings and who's going to present the information at these meetings, right? It's the key players. Who is responsible for what, who's going to be at the meetings. And I'll tell you this, it's really easy to break this down into two categories. One is who's going to be there, and the other is who's going to present. And if we look at who's going to be in attendance, the really simple answer is everybody should be in attendance. I think that's key to your organizational success. And if we look at the importance of the messages that we're putting out, which we'll get into that in a little bit later in the podcast, why would we not want to have all of our folks at these meetings? One of the goals as I go through this presentation that I talk about is having a strong safety culture. Well, to have a strong safety culture, there needs to be this sense of team and have everybody together, and everybody's working together to achieve a certain goal. We got to have everybody there. That goes from the owners, the executives, the presidents, the safety team, the operations folks, everybody in the organization, your mechanics. If you've got warehousing, the folks in the warehouse, it's extremely important that we have that aspect. And Barry, I know that you've been in the role of safety director on the motor carrier side. And I don't know how many, you guys probably did this right, but I wanted to get your take on this when it comes to who's at safety meetings and how important it is to have everybody there. In your experience, is it difficult to get everybody there?
Mike, absolutely. It's very difficult. But again, to iterate what you're driving at here is if you've got everyone in the company, from the billing clerk all the way up to the CEO, COO of the company, again, you're setting that tone, and what tone is set is, just that buy-in from everyone, from, like I said, the billing clerk all the way to the CEO, because, when you think about it, you're developing that culture that if the billing clerk is, let's just say, walking through the yard and sees somebody driving 25 to 30 miles an hour through your yard, he or she knows, hey, we talked about that in the safety meeting last week. And how valuable is that to have that person even approach the driver who is speeding like that through the yard and just say, hey, look, what we do here matters. And you're a reflection of me, and I'm a reflection of you. And that just creates that sense of accountability. As long as everyone is on the same page, I can't express enough how valuable that is, because again, you're creating accountability all throughout your organization.
It's one of those things where when we look at safety and what it means to our company, and it's part of our culture, it's really not, it's not the responsibility of one person or a group of people. It's the responsibility of everyone. So if we have a company-wide goal, or we have something that we want to accomplish, everybody needs to know that. And then I'll throw this out there, because I know not every company's the same size. Not every company is built the same. I mean, there's obviously trucking companies out there with thousands of employees, and there's trucking companies out there listening to us with 5 to 10 employees. We get that. If you've got 1,000 employees, you're going to handle this differently than someone that has 10 employees or 15 employees. I understand that. But the goal is, as Barry just said, is we're getting everybody on the same page. Everybody's hearing the same message. Everybody's in this together. This is a team. We're all part of this. And I think that's important because a lot of times, Jim, Kenny, you guys jump in. I want to hear what you guys have to say about this. But a lot of times when I talk to people about safety meetings and having company-wide safety meetings, getting everybody involved, it's really easy to immediately respond with, nope, can't do it. That's impossible. We can't do that. It just immediately we can't do that. So if you're listening to us out there, I understand the difficulty of this, but I also understand the importance of it. So I'm just asking you to keep an open mind and think outside the box and start thinking of ways that, how can we do this? What does it look like? What's the world look like where we do get this accomplished? Start thinking in that realm. Because I don't know if you ever talk to your clients or there's motor carriers or Jim on the ag side, if you talk to people about safety meetings and they just kind of shut you down almost and say, well, we can't do this. It's just impossible.
I'm glad that you just covered what you did. I was going to come on and say, guys, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to be the pain in the hindquarters here and give a list of reasons why it's almost just impossible to pull off. But the way you turned around and framed it about thinking outside of the box, I couldn't agree more. Two of the most egregious, just out of nowhere injuries that I've come across in my time in safety, they happen to office folks, completely away from the major dangers that we taught on weekly. And so, I was going to come out of left field with, well, you just talked about the billers, the dispatchers, the account managers. You talked about all these office folks. So what are we going to do? They've got stuff that starts at 8:00 in the morning. Are we going to pay them for 30 minutes to have everybody come in at 7:30 for a safety meeting? But Mike, the twist that you put on the end there that put me on my heels and said, Jim, that's not worth saying right now because Mike covered it, was this outside of the box approach. All right. Yeah. So I've got 100 employees. Well, of those 100 employees, maybe 50 are the operators and they're out and they're gone and they're tough to get a hold of. Well, that is a more repetitive, that's a more frequent safety meeting that we're holding to catch those folks that are out there where it should be. That's where the highest risk is for injury, property damage, equipment damage. That's where that frequency is probably an uptick. And operationally, financially, it doesn't make sense for me to pull in absolutely everybody on a weekly basis or maybe even a monthly basis for a safety meeting. We can't sustain that operational tempo. But what about once a quarter? If we are once a quarter hitting high level marks for our office folks and focusing on certain things that have an effect on them, maybe that's the op tempo that we should have for those people that we are struggling to figure out. How do we get their participation? How do we get their buy-in? How do we change the culture throughout the company and still facilitate the different roles within the company at the level they need to be contacted? Does that make sense?
Jim, I couldn't agree with you more. The importance of having the folks that are in our world, it's the non-drivers, right? It's the non-drivers where we have the contact with them just like we would with the drivers. And the drivers in our world, those folks that are out on the road all week, and you kind of mentioned that, Jim. It's like, yeah, they're gonna have more frequent contact, or we're gonna be putting more information out to them, but we may not have them sitting in a seat every week in the office doing classroom training. Okay, we get that. But let's think outside the box on this. And I'm glad you brought up the point where it's important to have everybody there, because you guys have heard me do this presentation and you've heard me talk about one individual where it's been several years ago. I was working with a company and they had a bad work comp claim, and it wasn't driver, it wasn't a mechanic, it wasn't anybody doing a safety sensitive function. It was an office employee that tripped in the office and fell down and was injured pretty severely. There's a message there. There's a safety message there for those folks as well. So everybody needs to be involved in that, because one of the things is, we were talking about the goals earlier, and we didn't really talk about this one specifically, but one of the goals that we should have of a safety meeting is accident prevention, right? Whether it's injury or accident prevention, because the accident prevention is where people get hurt, where people get killed. This is kind of the height of, when it comes to looking at goals, this is where we need to get to. Is we want to protect our folks. We want to protect life. We want to protect them from getting hurt, from getting killed. And that's one of the reasons why it's so important that we don't just focus on one small group of our company, but we focus on the entire company. So we got to think about that. We got to think about how that's going to work for us. You guys that are listening to us out there, I know it's challenging, and I understand that, because we've all talked to, hundreds, if not thousands of companies over our careers. And we know this is a challenge, but it's worth it. It's important, because when we think about that goal of protecting life, preventing accidents, what better thing could we do? So keep that in mind as we're going through this. When we talk about how to structure these safety meetings, is how is this going to help us get to our goal of injury prevention, accident prevention, we're protecting life, and all the other goals we could list. How is this going to get us to that? And I feel like, Jim, to your point, when we say, let's get everybody together, the best we can and structured in a way that makes sense for our company, I feel like that's an important thing that you all need to talk about within your group at your companies. So when we think about the folks that should be there, just in attendance, who's going to be at the safety meeting, we also need to talk about who's going to be presenting the information, who's going to have the message to present at the meeting. So let's break this down, guys, into 4 different groups. The first one is, we've got the leaders of the company, the owners, the executives, the presidents, whoever that is. We've got the leadership of the company. The second group is, we've got the safety directors or the safety team. The third group is, we've got the external experts. And the fourth group is, we've got peer-to-peer, folks within our walls of our company. Okay. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to break this down a little bit. You guys jump in wherever you want to. Feel free to stop, pause, and give me your thoughts, because you guys have heard this. You probably have your own thoughts. But just for the folks listening, I'm going to break it down really quickly, just so we kind of know what we mean by these 4 categories. And if you're listening to us out there, it's 100% okay for you to add categories onto this as far as who's going to be presenting at your safety meetings. But I feel like, again, I said earlier, painting with a broad brush here, I feel like most speakers at your meetings or most presenters are going to fall into one of these 4 categories. But again, there could be more. That's up to you. Right off the bat, owners and executives, you guys are the leaders. You're the captain of the ship. Really, what you feel about safety, your attitude towards safety, is what your company's attitude towards safety is. So make sure that that attitude is a good one. Make sure that what you feel about safety, what you believe about safety, is getting through to the rest of your team, because what you do matters. Not only being in attendance to these meetings, but this is an opportunity for you to show, I believe in a strong safety culture. This is a value to us. This is important to our operation. That comes through, not just showing up, but being there. And some of the things that you can do at a safety meeting would be talking about the direction that you want your company to head, right? Especially in the realm of safety. And there may be areas where your company is not having great success in the safety world. Well, here you could get up, have full transparency, and say, this is where we're at. We're not being successful here, but here's some things we're going to do with the help of our safety team. Here's some things we're going to do. This is the direction we're heading. I think that's extremely important for you all to do that, for you to stand up in front of the entire team and say, this is important to me. This is important to this company. And here's how we're going to get better as a team. And that's going to create that strong safety culture. People are going to see you and understand that, okay, this is the culture at the company I'm at. And I think that's important. It's important to share updates on things you've already done. So maybe you've already held meetings and you're providing some updates to those safety initiatives you've already put in place. Absolutely share that stuff. Hey, we're getting better, or we're not getting better, and here's how we're going to correct that. That's important for you to share. But one of the really key parts of this, as far as your responsibility goes when it comes to a safety meeting, is show some support for your safety director, your VP of safety, your safety team, whoever that is. Show them some support, because they're carrying some weight on this. They're carrying the bulk of the load when it comes to safety initiatives. And I feel like it's important for the company as a whole to see you show a lot of support for them and say, no, this is not just we're putting this all on the safety team. It's not just one person over here that they're making us do all this. No, this is important to me as the leader, right? And I don't know, guys, if you see, I've got companies that absolutely do this well. And I've got other companies that I've worked with over the years that are figuring this out. I don't know what you see out there, but I feel like this is a really important aspect of it, because when everything starts at the top on this, the leaders of the company are going to set the tone.
That's one thing I always like to hit on. And after we got to hear you speak, Jim and I were kind of talking about it on the way home. And, one thing I really want to remind, especially ownership and C-level employees, is remember that, and Mike, you hit on this in your presentation, remember that you've got a safety professional there that you're paying to be a subject matter expert. So when they bring initiatives to you, when they bring anything to you, I cannot stress enough how important it is for you to jump behind them and cheer and rah, and even if they're going to humbly bring the material to you and make sure that you understand it and can explain it very confidently. I cannot stress enough that if you've got someone who is putting in the work, and I can't tell you how much it means to that person that you've got their back, you're trusting the information that they're bringing forward, and you're helping just scream that message from the tallest of rooftops. Because again, guys, we talk a lot about safety culture and things like that. I'm a believer that the safety department can set the entire tone for the culture of the company, because, we talked a little bit about being transparent in the safety or in the safety meetings and things like that. This is your chance to speak to everyone, and really, like Mike said, add that layer of transparency where you're going to get the buy-in from everyone, to where maybe if old Jim Bob, who's driving every day, is in a bad mood, he feels more comfortable with coming forward with issues that he may have that may not even be safety related. So again, it's just great that if you'll get behind these people, you've entrusted them to be subject matter experts, get behind them, cheer, be their biggest proponent for these initiatives that they push forward.
I want to scream rah rah for that comment, Barry. That was pretty excellent. Two things on the owners and executives being in that room. One may not be popular, but I'm going to share it anyways, because we try to be a little bit real on here. The owner/executive, those C-suite folks that are present, they have an opportunity to show finances and how safety and a good safety culture can drive profitability. And they can show the negative effects of incidents that may happen. Maybe not the whole medical piece, but absolutely they can share equipment downtime, equipment loss. And when real numbers, real data gets put in front of our, we only hire people that can do our job, and they're intelligent and they're good at what they do. They're going to understand finances. We're not overcomplicating it, but we're sharing, this is why these things are important. And when that owner/executive takes it a step farther and can say, this is nothing in comparison to what family effect did this incident have? what happened to my employee and their family because of this, there's nothing more personal than that. Nothing. So that's the one point, and the other point is that culture. It's driven top down. The support of the safety personnel. It's absolutely paramount. And just by sitting there, if you don't say a word, it gives credibility and clout to those that run that program, and it gives them an authority that you have so much respect for what they're doing that your time of your job, of your piece, is given up to be there, and you sit and you listen and you give that attention. It empowers and it emboldens that safety professional in their duties. And that's a culture change right there.
Absolutely. And I mean, Jim, if one of our goals we talked about earlier was employee engagement, if you're a leader in your company and you're giving that kind of support to your safety team, your safety director, they are going to feel extremely valued. It's going to be a point of engagement for them. They're going to stick around and work hard for you, right? And I've seen bad situations where there's somebody in safety that's working really hard to try to make the company better, and the owners are not engaged in the process. The executives are not engaged in the process, and it just doesn't work. Just doesn't work. So it's such an important point here for you guys, you leaders of the company, for you to be involved, engaged in what's going on, and showing that support, just like Jim was talking about. It's going to help you reach multiple goals. One, it's going to make you a better company. You're going to be more successful. Safety is good business. You guys have heard me say that when I present this, and Jim just hit on that. But it's also going to engage your employees, because you're really going to it's going to make that safety director feel like they're valued and they're supported, and they're going to be more successful in the job you've hired them to do. So let's jump into that aspect. So right now we've got the leaders of the company is the first category. The second category is the safety director or the safety team. And I feel like this is one of those areas where, and Barry's already hit on it, you all within the four walls of your company, you're the subject matter experts there. And we know you've got a tough job, but I want to encourage you all in this. The bulk of the load of this is going to fall on you, because you are that subject matter expert. And I completely understand that there is a lot of levels of experience and understanding when it comes to the folks listening to us. In your role as a safety director, or safety manager, or VP of safety, it doesn't matter what your title is. There's a lot of levels of experience there. I get that, and that's perfectly fine. But you still need to embrace that role as a subject matter expert, because you're the one that people are going to turn to, right? You're the one that in a safety meeting, you're the one that's providing the regulatory guidance, the risk management guidance. You're the one that's doing that. So I want to encourage you to continue to learn, to get better, to get stronger in your role, because you're the one that everybody's going to be looking to. You're the one that's going to be carrying the bulk of the load. So embrace that. And just like, guys, we were talking about the support of the executives or the owners for the safety team or the safety director, there's kind of a role there for the safety director to support the rest of the company as well. Because a lot of times these safety initiatives are difficult. They're not easy to accomplish. If you've got a problem in your company and you say, we need to fix this, whether it's losses or CSA scores, whatever, it's a challenge. Well, you as a safety director, as a safety manager, or part of the safety team, whatever your role is, you need to show the employees of your company the same kind of support that you're getting from the leadership. I think that's extremely important. So the next role, we've got external experts. And guys, what do you guys think of when we think of external experts, inviting somebody into the safety meeting and have a voice within our company?
I think you don't have to make it complicated. With a grain company I used to work for, if we were within an hour of a sister facility, we would swap facility managers or territory managers, and we'd rotate around a territory just so the employees would get a fresh taste or a different different angle. But I mean, us guys, we're an external expert, and I hope that our customers know that I've got an event coming up. I kind of want to make it a big one. I'd like to bring in some outside people because I think I'm getting that Charlie Brown wah 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 sound, and I want somebody else with a different voice. And so that's us. And it doesn't have to cost money, folks. It doesn't. You can find people willing and able to share out there just for the sake of this is what we're passionate about. That's what I think of on external experts.
I'll tell you, my favorite is bringing in the local DOT guy to my shop employees, whether it be Troop K here in Oklahoma or whomever in Texas or Missouri or Kansas. Have them come in and do a level 1 inspection. It really gives whomever is there to watch a good opportunity to A, see the process, but B, realize that they're just real people who are just wanting to make it safer. They see them as more of an ally at that point and a resource. They're not afraid to reach out and talk to them or ask them, what does that inspection look like again? Or sometimes they'll even provide the form for you. So again, great example of an external expert. They love to teach. Take them to lunch. It's a great opportunity.
Yeah, and you're not only getting great technical reinforcement there for your folks, but you're building relationships in that industry. And you just mentioned that, Barry. It's like, hey, well, now I pull into this scale. I know this guy. I've met this gal that's inspecting my truck. We're on a first name basis. I know exactly who they are, and I'm not saying that's going to get you out of anything, but it certainly doesn't help anything to build a relationship with somebody and for them to know, that all that does is show that officer, that trooper, hey, these folks, I remember them. This company invited me in a few months ago. They're trying to do things right. They're trying to get better, And I think that speaks volumes. But so I agree. There's, we'd mentioned it before where one of our goals is to be in compliance with the regulations, and we're a very heavily regulated industry. This is one of those areas where if you've got a governmental agency or a regulatory agency that has folks that can come out and be a part of your safety meetings, just like Barry was talking about, absolutely reach out to them. There's a wealth of knowledge there, great resources. And as you said, Barry, they're more than willing to help if they're available. Now, those folks are busy. I get it. They've got a lot of stuff going on. But if you reach out to them and say, hey, this is what we've got going on, they're more than happy to do that. And Jim mentioned the consultants. There's a lot of third-party consultants out there. Industry associations, I want you guys to think about that, whether it's a state association or a national association that you might be a member of. Think outside the box on that. There's a lot of folks that will come. And again, as Barry said, this is not, these speakers, a lot of these aren't going to cost you any money. Now, some of it you might have to, if you want to get a big time speaker in, good for you. I mean, you might have to pay some travel expenses or whatever, but a lot of these speakers that you can bring in are really not going to cost you anything. And it's, again, a great way to build relationships in the industry. The last area, guys, we've got, and Jim, you kind of hit on this a little bit with what you said about the different terminal managers and stuff going around, is the peer-to-peer or learning from folks within your company. And this is an area which you guys have heard me say this. I feel like people kind of miss this a little bit. They kind of overlook this. And if you're a director out there at a trucking company, you may have some folks within your four walls that have some really, really good experience or some expertise in a certain area that would be beneficial for the rest of your team. And I feel like this is a way that can build some engagement in the employees that you ask to come help. And the example I gave that you guys have heard is just a simple example is if you're, let's say, traditionally just a dry van carrier and you add another type of freight or another type of trailer like a flatbed to your fleet, and you've got a driver that has 20 years of experience pulling a flatbed and has a ton of knowledge on load securement, why not utilize that individual in a safety meeting to help train your employees on how to do load securement, and all that all the details of pulling a flatbed trailer. I think that's a great example. You can utilize that individual. You're going to get good knowledge out, and you're going to get some engagement on that employee side. Now, I will say this. Not every company is going to have somebody that you're going to be able to do this with. I get that. It's you as a safety director. You're going to have to recognize that expertise within that employee that's going to be able to help you. And you as the subject matter expert, you're going to have to make sure that whatever they're teaching on is accurate, because that's going to be extremely important. That, if you've got one of your drivers teaching other drivers about load securement, you need to make sure that they're right. You need to make sure that they're accurate. But it's important to engage that employee and help them help you get your company in a position of success when it comes to safety. And I think, I don't know about you guys, but I think that's an area where I think people overlook that quite a bit. I don't see that happening a lot, but I feel like it's very successful when it does happen.
Yeah, it is. Those subject matter experts on specific things. You ever heard that saying, who do you fear the most? The person that practices 1,000 kicks, or the person that practices one kick 1,000 times, right? They probably know how to use that one kick really stinking well. And you've got those folks in your walls right now that can add to your safety program. You want to talk about buy-in. You take that one truck driver that's got 1 million miles, or I mean, they're way up there, and they've been doing something very specific, and they have figured out the right way, the proper way to do it. And they come back in and they talk to their peers at the table. Just watch how they have their peers' full attention as they are laying out a different procedure or a different process, or how do we do this safely? How have I done it so many times without having an incident? That is a valuable asset. It's a valuable arrow in your quiver there. Mike, this was outstanding. Kenny didn't talk that much, but I think Kenny was really enjoying it. So Barry, Mike, Kenny, I loved it. Thanks for having a great, engaging podcast today. Listeners, thanks for joining us on the radio waves. If you need additional information, reach out to your trusted risk consultant, and stay tuned. Part number 2 of Spicing Up Your Safety Meeting. It's coming, and we look forward to recording it for you guys. Until then, for my good friends Mike, Kenny, and Barry, I'm Jim Seibert. Stay safe. Thanks for joining us on Driving the Line, the podcast that's always in the pursuit of safety.
That's all the time we have for this edition of Driving the Line, the pursuit of safety. We hope you enjoyed our discussion, and thank you for listening. You can rate, review, and subscribe to Driving the Line, the pursuit of safety on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube Music, or any other app you're using. You can also follow Marsh McLennan Agency on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. Until the next time, thanks again for listening. Drive safely, everyone.